We will now reconvene and move into the town hall portion of this forum. To kick us off on this discussion, we decided that we wanted to start from a historical standpoint. And of course, we've invited our godmother here, Dr. Josie R. Johnson. Now, I have had the privilege of introducing Dr. Johnson in the past, and she always pulls me to the side and says, "Do not read all of my bio." So I've taken note from that, and I will not do that, but I will just refer to her as I did before, as the godmother and our mentor and guide. Please welcome to the podium, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you very much. I didn't realize she meant I should come up to the podium. Good afternoon. May I first begin my sharing with you this afternoon my deep, deep sense of appreciation. I can't tell you what it means to have such a program with the mission and goal to make a difference and to try and put into place everything that all of us and our ancestors wished for. So for me, my friends, I am so deeply honored to have this opportunity to have something in my name. Can you imagine that? And to have all of us focusing on something that we can eventually make a difference. I am pleased that we're going to address, to great degree, the conversation about generational differences and the gap that may exist among us. I am old, and I have watched us as a people in what has been defined in a number of ways as generational differences or gaps. I'm blessed, however, to have been able to understand what that gap means and to, in my judgment, understand the why of it today. When I look at us and our youth, I remember that it is our youth that so often helps us understand the now. It was our young people who were engaged in the struggle from generations back. I remember in the 60s, young people coming to us, their elders then, and questioning methodology and asking what difference did any of this make. In my view, what we have not done is to tell our story, to share our history with our young people, so that there is an understanding of why each generation feels the need to introduce another method of trying to arrive at the common goals of justice and equality. I know that what we must do as a community is to stay in touch with each other. We must tell the history. We must remove some of the issues from the plate of our children so that they can be reassured that some of the struggles that they've experienced, their ancestors have experienced, and they've read about in history are still possible. I maintain that the reason our children today are testing some of the strategies they think will work is because they haven't been convinced that what we're doing works. And therefore, without a conversation about those strategies and the rationale for what was doing at that period in history, and the assessment of what was the result of that behavior, if we're not able to tell our children their history, our common struggle, the uniformity of oppression and supremacy, if we're not able to help our children understand what has been done, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and why those things that haven't worked. And if we're not able, my family, to tell that story clearly, next generation will create their strategies for trying to correct the ill of a society that treats us from one generation to another the same way. We are never able to remove enough of the issues facing our children to make them feel that what we're doing matters and makes a difference. And unless we can do that, we will never be able to unify the number of generations who are trying to remove oppression, segregation, supremacy from the agenda of American society. Our children deserve a thoughtful assessment of what's working and what isn't working. And we have as much responsibility, as one of my young friends reminded me, we have as much responsibility to tell them what works as to reminding them what doesn't work. And you are the model of what works. How do you translate what you do so that the children feel that there is possibility? The mission of this organization is to do what other generations have tried to do, and in some cases very unsuccessfully. But as you listen to the various strategies and conversations, they are in our history. They are part of what we've talked about since our ancestors were freed. And what our responsibility today is to make this particular collection and your effort show our children that we can indeed move forward and take some of the issues that are on their plate off and show them, because they don't come off. My generation and generations before me, my father graduated from college in 1926, wanted to go to law school, there were no graduate programs that he could apply to. The same thing happens over and over, and we have to explain and prove to our children that they can be all they can be, and we will be a part of that training. I just think that for me, at this age, I've seen so much. I have cried so much. And I feel today perhaps more hopeful than ever because we are clearer about what we're going to do, not just talk about it, but we're going to prove to each other that hard work, discipline, commitment, love of family, love of history will work. I pray that we will. And the urgency is now. Our children need us now. Dr. King said, and I will paraphrase it, most people have heard it, it's not, we don't show our character when things are okay. The real show of character is when things are not okay. Right now, things are not okay. And you have a responsibility, as I have, to make them okay. We have to ask ourselves why people like Mr. Trump and others are so revered by a particular sector of our society. And I think it's because I don't think we realized until President Obama was elected how deeply etched supremacy is in the society of America. And we have to be aware of that, how deeply etched it is, and fight it. We have to unlearn many of the things that have been taught, not only to us, but to our children. Minnesota, we have much to do, and I am so honored to be a part of that plan. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for your inspiring words. It's always important to have a historical perspective when trying to develop future plans for our community, so we thank you for providing that for us. Always. Thank you. We're now going to move into the Town Hall Forum section of the program. Now, the format of well, actually, let me back up a little bit. One of the reasons we wanted to do this Town Hall Forum and we picked this topic is because we always want to make sure we focus on the entire community, the broader community. I remember speaking a few months ago during the Josie R. Johnson Leadership Academy graduation, and one of the things I said is I love us. And what I meant by that is I love everyone in this community. Everyone is included in this community. And that, to me, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter what your educational attainment has been. It doesn't matter what your socioeconomic status has been, or any of that. What's important is that those individuals that are part of this community, that are hit with the disparities in this community and the ills in this community, because we're dealing with systemic racism and some of the ills that are still plaguing us from slavery. I love us. And what's important for this organization is that we all survive and that we all thrive, no matter where we are and where we're coming from. That's very important. So this panel was designed to bring in all of us from the different areas of the community, from the different, in terms of the civic engagement, the political activism, all of us. different generations, all of us. Now, this panel reflects some diversity. What we're working toward is to continue to include all of the community. So for us, this is the start of the conversation in a dialogue to address some of these issues. And we hope to continue that dialogue as we move forward so that we continue to include all of us. So the format of the panel is the moderator will ask questions of all the panelists. We will also take questions from the audience. And when we take those questions from the audience, we have an area over here that we'd like you to go to pose that question. So please do that. And Tony and I will be kind of moving around to make sure we direct traffic. Let me start with the moderator, who is Dr. Keith Mays. He's an associate professor in the Department of African American and African Studies at the University of Minnesota in the College of Liberal Arts. He's the Arthur Red Motley Exemplary Teacher. Dr. Mays earned his PhD in history from Princeton University. His teaching and research interests include the civil rights and Black Power movement, civil rights policy and the law, Black holiday traditions, race and education pedagogy, the history and practice of ethnic studies, multiculturalism and diversity, in the history of African Americans. Dr. Mays has published one book entitled Kwanzaa, Black Power and the Making of the African American Holiday Tradition. He is currently working on another book entitled The Unteachables, Civil Rights, Disability Rights, and the Origins of Black Education. That topic probably resonates with all of us. Dr. Mays, thank you for being the moderator, and please come to the stage.
Good morning. I was going to say good afternoon. It's almost time to eat lunch. Thank you, Cedric, for that wonderful introduction. I'm so glad to be here to moderate this panel because, as you guys know, we are living in some very challenging times. I think the times are actually great for us to really get into this session with this esteemed panel, who I will introduce here in a second. But I want to say something just briefly about the Black freedom struggle and how important the Black freedom struggle is to Black advancement. One of the things that we have to keep in mind, and this is something that I tell my students all the time, is that protest is essential to augmenting the boundaries of democracy. No politician, no high-level public official, no administrator rolls out of bed to give you anything. It has always come at the hands of young folks and folks who were willing to sacrifice themselves and to do the messy work of activism. We have to bear that in mind. So when we talk about the Black freedom struggle historically, we're talking about a struggle that started on those slave ships. We're talking about a struggle that continued during the American Revolution. We also are talking about that struggle that included some of our great leaders that were part of movements like abolitionism, also part of movements like the founding of the Niagara Movement and the NAACP and the Urban League in the late 19th century, early 20th century. We're talking about a period in which artistic expression and the flowering of Black popular culture also contributed to our advancement. Protest doesn't only come in the form of public speeches, but it also has come in the form of our music, of our poetry, and also in dance and fine arts. Also, the Black protest tradition is about expanding employment opportunities. So there's a rich history of the Black trade union movement that's always been a feature of the 20th century. And of course, you guys know about the great civil rights movement that began, most people think it began in the 1950s, 54 with the Brown decision, but of course it began much earlier, but the flowering and the culmination of that movement we witnessed in this country in the 1960s and 1970s. So here we are again with something called Black Lives Matter. And Black Lives Matter is important because it says Black Lives Matter. The question for us in 2016 is, what Black lives Matter. We need to have a conversation about that. What is this black in Black Lives Matter? We know that it includes certain groups or certain people, but I want to pose the question, does it include groups like the diverse blackness that Representative Ellison talked about? Does it include East and West Africans? Does it really include black women? Are black women really visible in this movement? Does it include our black, queer, and trans brothers and sisters? I want to pose that to you as a question, because I don't think that there's a consensus on what Black lives mean in 2016. We have to get our house in order. We have to expand notions of black identity. In order for us to move forward, we have to understand what black truly means, and it means all of us. All right, so let me get into the introductions. I don't want to get up here and start lecturing to you, which is what the University of Minnesota pays me to do. Michael Walker is the director of the Office of Black Male Student Achievement for Minneapolis Public Schools. He earned his undergraduate degree in physical education from Southwest Minnesota State University and his master's degree in counseling from the University of Wisconsin River Falls. Please welcome Michael Walker to the panel. These are some short introductions. I had longer biographies, they cut them. Next, Maya Buckner is a social worker at the Harvest Network of Schools. She earned her master's degree in social work from the University of Minnesota, and in 2015 became program coordinator for Divine Institute, a literacy-focused youth enrichment program. Please welcome Maya Buckner to the panel. Next, Justin Terrell as a Justice for All program manager at Take Action Minnesota. Justin's work focuses on removing barriers to employment and democracy for families impacted by the justice system. Under his leadership, J4A successfully moved Target Corporation to change their hiring practices across the country. Please welcome Brother Justin Terrell to the panel. And lastly, Akua Ellis is the new director of advocacy for Catholic Charities of St. Paul in Minneapolis. In this role, Akua Ellis directs the organization's social justice advocacy and community, what the hell is the rest of the damn?
I like this cat.
Engagement work, leading a network of thousands of advocates, volunteers, and community leaders. That's why I like to work from my own copy. Please welcome Sister Akua to the panel to sit alongside the great Mr. Dr. Josie Johnson. I met Josie, I've been here 12 years. One of the first people I met when I came to Minnesota was fittingly Dr. Johnson and Elder Mahmoud El Khati, and they've been mentors of mine for 12 years. So it's a pleasure of mine to see you here, Dr. Johnson. Okay, let me start, because Tony and Cedric are telling me that we're way behind, and somehow we're going to catch up. I told them we were going to catch up on my watch. I need to take my time here. I want to direct this first question at Dr. Johnson, if I may. What do you think is causing the most tension between the generation that grew up in the immediate decades after the Civil Rights Movement and the current generation that's fueling the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, I tried to address that in my comments in the beginning. I believe it's because our children are now beginning to have visual evidence of what they and their ancestors have been suspicious of for a very long time. And I believe that they have gotten to the point that they feel even with this kind of evidence, it is still difficult for people to understand we're talking about Black lives and the attitude that's been developed throughout history, from the slave ships and before till beyond and after our effort to be emancipated, and for people to understand the values that have been developed as a result of our ancestors and our history. They wanted to try another strategy. And that strategy is one that, in my view, we as their elders had hoped to be invited, engaged, involved. So what we do is develop a sense of what works and what doesn't, and to be trusting of each other. We've lost a sense of trust in each other, and we've lost the trust of our children. And I believe if we can regain that the idea of testing another strategy would be one that we can all be engaged in and to be helpful of, rather than, as someone said, what are those young people doing? They're doing what we've always done, and that's to try to eliminate this sense of supremacy that exists in America.
I want to add that this is going to be a formal a panel where I'm moderating and asking questions, but at any time, any of you guys want to jump in, we'll have a formal Q&A, but the session is open now for you guys to respond to anything that the panelists say. The next question is for Sister Maya. The ills of racism have plagued the African American community for hundreds of years. The strategies of the civil rights movement, protests, sit-ins, and marches have produced gains. Wouldn't it be accurate to say that the strategies of the current movement are similar, with the only difference being technology, i.e. social media?
Thank you, Dr. Mays. I would definitely agree that technology is something it's a factor that's different. I wouldn't say that the strategies are totally, out the box. We're doing the same things. We're protesting, we're marching, but I'd say that the intention behind those strategies are a bit different. So like Dr. Johnson alluded to earlier, she said that we're seeing, it's visual to us. We're able to see the struggle take place right before our own eyes. So all it takes is a tweet or a Facebook status or a video to go live and to show, the assassination of Oscar Grant, or the homicide of Eric Gardner, or the what led up to the homicide of Freddie Gray. We see that, with our own eyes, and I think that plays a major role. But I also think that the movement today with the Black Lives Matter, it's a bit different, because the civil rights movement, I think we used it to kind of, educate ourselves and, show ourselves that we were valuable and that we were worthy of, voting, having equal rights and voting and being able to sit anywhere we wanted on the bus and things of that nature. But I feel like now it's moved to, we're not just trying to change the rules, but we're trying to change the systems that enforce those rules. And I think that the movements today, it's not just about civil rights anymore, and I think that that's evident. It's more about human rights. We're humans, and that's why we're so adamant that Black Lives Matter. We're here, we're breathing, we're valuable, we're alive. So I think it's more than just technology. It's the intention behind those strategies now.
The next question is for Sister Akua. What do you think is needed for the leaders from the civil rights movement and the current movement to come together and unify on the issues that currently plague the community?
So I'm just going to say that wasn't the question we agreed upon.
No, we had to switch. You had to call me out. Okay, I'm sorry.
We're being open and honest here, but it is something that I've obviously given thought to. I think at the end of the day, what's lacking is a willingness to listen, to ask the question and to listen, to understand on both ends of the spectrum. So of our seasoned leaders, and for those folks that are, you know, emerging on the scene. And I hate the term emerging leaders because I often think that, you know, that's someone's attempt to kind of put you in a box. But I mean, those folks whose methods are emerging in terms of greater visibility. I honestly think that at the crux of it is a lack of curiosity about the other's approach. You know, one of the things that I feel really passionate about this issue, and when someone reached out and asked if I'd be on the panel, I said, oh, you know, I've got lots of thoughts on this topic, because I talk a lot about it. But I think at the end of the day, we are missing an opportunity to fully capitalize on the strengths that our community has to offer, because we are working oftentimes at cross purposes with one another. And you know, even, so this generational divide is not unique to African Americans. You know, new and seasoned leaders, the establishment and radical approaches, that's not unique to us. What is unique to us is the interjection of, and to the point that you raised earlier, a sense of blackness and what it means to be down. And I often feel like when we disagree with one another, we attack, you know, that sense of blackness, and someone is not perceived to be down if they choose a different approach. And that's something that's always been a source of frustration for me, rather than working to understand why is it that you approach it, to the point you raised as well, Dr. Johnson. Why is it that people are approaching the same problems different ways, and what is it that we can learn from one another? I think it's a competitive advantage, and I think if we were to do that better, we would really maximize all of the assets that exist within this room and in our community.
On that point, Brother Mike, I want to ask you, how do we build bridges between the younger and the older community? You work specifically with young black males. How do you see us bridging the divide between young and so-called old?
All right, cool. Can you guys hear me? Is that microphone? All right, perfect. So just, I'll tell a story first to start off. Last year, when we started the Office of Black Male Student Achievement, in the year before, we had a program called 100 Men Who Care. They did an event at Patrick Henry. They brought 100 black men into the school to work with and mentor and connect with our young black males at Henry High School. A year later, or about 6 months later, I went back and I was doing my 100 days of listening to find out information about how we was going to start the Office of Black Male Student Achievement. When I was at Henry, a student told me that, hey, I can't believe you guys flew all those black men into the community to sit down and speak to us. Did you guys hear that? I can't believe you flew all those black men into the community to be with us. So first of all, we're not even visible to our young men in our communities, in our schools. And so the first answer to that is, how do we be visible? And that's showing up personally, not with finances, but showing up personally with our time and our energy and our expertise. The other thing is, I had some gentlemen here from out of town this past week from Dayton Public Schools, and they had an elder with them. He was a 73-year-old board member from their district. And I took them around to the schools, and they were actually watching and observing our classroom that we have. And he started to come in and share his story. And one thing that we do in our class is that first, everyone must share their autobiography. It's very important that people share their story and we know each other's stories and trials and tribulations. And so this gentleman, 73-year-old, started to tell his story to our students. And what I saw is the students started to lean in, started to connect. And the reason why they were connecting is that he shared his story from 1952, 54, when he was in first or second grade, and how a teacher called him the N-word in class. And what happened was our students were able to connect with that in 2016, that they may not be called the N-word, but they're called other words. Thugs, criminals, you're bad. And so, as Dr. said, that we have to hear those stories so that we know that our elders came through that issues, and now we're still facing those same issues. And so I think it's about how do we make sure that we connect each other and building opportunities and space for folks to see and be visible. So with that being said, the other day after that gentleman spoke into our classroom, it made me go out and connect with a Ebenezer community home. They have a program called Black Men Matter. And so I'm connecting with them right now to figure out how do we bring them back into our schools so that our young people can see these elders. One thing I talk about really important to me is about, we use the term role models. I don't like that term because to me that's someone that you can't touch. That's usually someone on TV, athlete or entertainer. I like to use the term real models. And I want to bring in real models into our schools because those are the people that are sitting in this space right here who our young men can ask real questions of. They can see you in the community being a man and going to work, taking care of your family, involving in the community. And so I want to see how many more real models we can get into our schools to impact our young people.
Brother Justin, your question, how to be strategic change agents is the question. What are some of the ways to create strategic action plans that are more inclusive of the broader black community?
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? All right, I just want to say thank you to our moderator. Thank you to Dr. Johnson. I also want to say thank you to Jeff, who walked away somewhere, but I really appreciate his leadership and all the efforts that people have put in to bring us together today. So I have an issue with the whole premise of this conversation, to be honest. I just want to start by saying, like, who said there's a divide? Raise your hand if you've hit the block, hit the streets, been in the marches, been at the Capitol fighting for your issues over the last year. Raise your hand. Who says there's a divide? So I want to challenge just outright the fact that this is the tools of the message of the master. Ain't no divide. What? Because Candace Montgomery and Michael McDowell got into it with some of the older folks in the community? Ain't no divide. Because we had some folks who had to stand with the mayor and say it's time to leave the 4th precinct. That's fine, because the community called for that. That's not a divide. That's listening. We have to stop and reorient ourselves. I have an issue with this question.
I didn't write the question, brother.
I don't have an issue with you.
I'm gonna put it on Alf.
Yeah. And
Cedric and Tony gave me the questions I asked.
And I got love for Tony. Yo, thank you for putting this together. This is an important conversation, but from the jump, we have to challenge the conversation, how we allow ourselves to just come out. I mean, we regurgitate what the master has been teaching us for years, right? Yeah. So I want to challenge this a little bit. This question is, how do you build strategic plans for inclusion, right? Well, who says we want inclusion? I heard the brother earlier said that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? Well, shoot, I want to set the table, the menu. I want to I want power, not inclusion. And I am clear about that. Are you? Here's what I will say. I mean, and I'm a big strategic guy, I'll be honest. Like, I write work plans for everything. It's kind of nerdy. It's my thing. But here's what I will say is that, like, we have to get away from, we have to do what Alpha's been doing. We have to start having conversations with folks, right? Talking about agendas and all that stuff is great, but then talking about who is in the way. Start naming who is in the way. Kurt Doubt is in the way. Sandy Pepin is in the way. The entire House of Representatives in the state of Minnesota is in the way. You know what? There are 12 CEOs in this state who are in the way. You want to talk about inclusion? I don't want to be included with them cats. I want to run their stuff. I want their money. Do you want their money? The strategies that I'm building is about that. The strategies that Black Lives Matter is building isn't about being included in this system. The analysis is that the system has been built to target and destroy our families, to incarcerate our men. Look, we don't want to be included in that. It's what I said to the men at the prison yesterday. We want to dismantle it brick by brick and build something that is inherent to how we live, how we manifest our values in our community. I'll tell a quick story and then I'll be quiet. This has been a difficult week in Justin world. I started this week at a convening in North Carolina at a plantation. And it wasn't one of them plantations where they pick cotton. The crop of this plantation was the destruction of the black spirit. I ended my week at a prison. And those men had been fighting and organizing for months to organize a Black History Month celebration. And just because they could, the DOC told them instead of a 2-day presentation, you get a 1-day presentation. And I walked in and I saw a bunch of defeated spirits. I don't want inclusion in that. I want a strategy to change that. There is a sister I met, a Native American sister who talked about case law for our Native American sisters and brothers and sisters out there. And there was a law that was passed when a murder happened in a Native American community. The community came together and dealt with that murderer, right? And he paid retribution for what he needed to do. He took care of the family that he had wronged. And then U.S. government came in and said, that's not good. We have to incarcerate that person. When the community had already decided how they wanted to deal with that. We are people on this land that, you know, they've intentionally destroyed a lot of what we have tried to hold on to. And I just want to say that, like, we need to get back to the place where we stop thinking in the frame of judges and probation and that and whatnot. We have to start thinking in the frame of, like, if a man wronged my family, and I sat him in this room, and I asked this room, what are the ways we want to deal with this man? What would we come up with from scratch? That's the strategy I'm trying to move. What would we come up with from scratch? What would it look like? And then we need to go talk to some of them folks at the Capitol that are in the way. And we need to go talk to some of them CEOs who are only thinking about profits, not people. And we need to talk to them about these new ideas that we got that came from us organically. Thank you. Thank you.
So brother Justin just told me to do something. Throw these questions away. So what I'm going to do right now is open it up to the floor. And I want you guys to weigh in, because what all the panelists have said were issues that came up earlier during the day, and they are points of contention, but I want to get you guys' perspective on it. So please come to the mic on the side and either ask a question of the panel or make a comment, either one. We want to keep this going.
How should we move about after we dismantle the system? What's the new house that we build for ourselves? If that kind of clarifies.
So if we tear it down, what are we building back up?
That's an important question.
Very important
Yeah.
question.
Do you have a reaction?
You know, someone said earlier on this panel, the need for us to listen and to talk together. I don't think, for me, I would be able right now to structure a system that I think would work best. What I think is required is to do what this organization is now trying to do, and that's identify what are the issues we want to address, and then what are the strategies we want to use to address them, rather than just talk. And perhaps once we've had an opportunity to do that kind of work, we will structure the system that we think would work. But we can't just talk about it, and we can't just come together and feel good about what we are doing today, but we have to go away, Al, next week, then tomorrow. It's hard work. We are a product, I don't care how we feel, we are a product of what we've been exposed to this point in our life. I've been exposed all my life to the struggle of justice and equality. And all I know is how to try to address that. I couldn't design a structure based on that by myself. We need all of us. And if we can create that, and I depend on my young generation to help us think this through, because you're closer to it.
Sister Akua wants to respond before we go to the next question. Yep, sister.
So a couple things that I would say to that is that, oftentimes we talk about this system when in fact there are multiple systems at work together that are colluding to our detriment, right? Someone who I don't believe is in this room has instilled in me as a policy analyst that you start with the problem, like what is the problem? And I think that that's why this conversation about maybe it's not a divide, this tension that exists between kind of new and seasoned is so important, because without getting on the same page about how we're defining the problem, then the strategies continue to be, all over the place, and we're not targeted in our efforts. We're not able to measure what it is that we want to get accomplished, to document whether or not we're working toward those ends, and fix it as we're moving along if we identify that there's a hiccup there. And so I think we have to start with the conversation about how we are collectively identifying the problem, and then move to create strategies to address that in a way that is thoughtful and intentional, and not in a knee-jerk reaction.
Next question. Yes, my sister.
But he said, what is the new way to live and how do we address these problems? The new way to live is what you created to be. You don't have to sit there and wait for somebody to tell you how to live. You create your own reality. It is all in your mind. It is all in your mind. You create your new way of living.
Like that. Ooh, it's all
Amen.
about
Amen.
Good afternoon. I wanted to tell the brother Terrell, I work with a number of groups of color, and the one group of color that always says they do not want to be included is the Native Americans, and they have done a fairly decent job of not being included in the system, but being exclusive. And I want to thank you because you're the first African American that has mentioned that. Mm-hmm. It's been something that needs to be verbalized, not just thought about, like the young sister says. Mm-hmm. We need to start looking around the room and choosing a young person so that we can lift them up. And our elders, we don't need to wait on our elders to come to us. We need to approach our elders and say, hey, I want to learn what's in your head, because I want that information before your time ends.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. There's not a lot of Asian in this room, and but I felt moved, and I just want, as a quick comment, I felt moved. I feel like I'm a part of your community. As a Hmong American, we owe so much to the African American brothers and sisters. Their leadership, your leadership, your sacrifice means so much to us, because we know that without you, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be able to have the kind of civic engagement that we have today, the opportunity. You have paved the way for us. And for me to see elders and young leaders sitting together trying to strategize, whether you want to set the table or be at the table, please allow Hmong Americans to be a part of that. We look up to your leadership. We are hurt when your community is hurt, when they arrest or prosecute you or kill you without due process. They are also harming us. And so as we move forward, we hope that you will accept us as one of your own, so that we can all, Paul Wellstone said we all do better when we all do better. I think they were talking about white people mostly. And so we need to be very specific that when people of color do better, we all do better. Thank you so much.
First off, brother, let me say that you made my heart smile, man. That touched me, and I guess I posed my question to the rest of the room. I don't know, personally, I noticed that while this brother was speaking, it just got tense, and it just, the room just got tense. The energy just shifted dramatically. And maybe some of it was good tension, maybe some of it wasn't. And I just asked that everyone ask why it got tense. Ask yourself if you did, why you got tense, or whatever reaction you had, leave and ask yourself why you had that reaction. And because I just think what he says just speaks to unity in us. And that being the only thing that matters and comes of any of this, none of it matters if we don't have that and we're not worried about us. So I'm just posing that to each of you, because that's what I noticed, and like I said, that meant a lot, personally. So thank you.
Thank you.
My question, or my statement, is that while we talk about building and we talk about growing, I don't necessarily see a whole lot of talk about healing from our experience. As a black woman, I can tell you I'm dead tired of being strong. I am dead tired of being supportive. I am tired of being abused as a result of my skin color, my sexuality, my whatever, and the experience of being a black in America, is equivalent to PTSD. So what damages are being paid? What arrangements are being made to support us as we try and move past this whole experience? Is there any work being done around that, and is there any thought being put into that?
In our program for Minneapolis Public Schools, we created a class called Black. It stands for Building Lives, Acquiring Cultural Knowledge. And we have 3 days of curriculum, and then there's 2 days that we do some different things. One day is around tutoring, so we bring in tutors to support our young men. And then the other day is called Open Mic. And it's just addressing that exact comment that you made, is about how do our young men have the space to talk about some of the trials and tribulations and struggles they have as they're navigating the system. And we have one of our instructors who's a therapist, and so he's having therapy sessions with our young men, and they're going through those wounds and talking about that structure. So we are doing that in our class. Obviously, it's a small number of students that we're working with right now, but as our program grows, it will reach more of our black male students in Minneapolis.
Can I respond quickly? Sister, what was your name? I'm sorry, I didn't. Edie? Yo, thank you for raising that. Because I'm gonna be honest, like my whole week has been traumatizing. And I just wanna tell a quick story. When I was in North Carolina earlier this week at this plantation, one of the reasons we go there is to first acknowledge our historical trauma. And the people I was there with, I don't know if you know any of these names, but you should write them down, look them up, but Dorsey Nunn, who was a man who coined the phrase ban the box. He's out of California. All of Us Are None is his organization, and Michelle Alexander's on his board. Norris Henderson, who was an elder to me. Norris Henderson spent 28 years incarcerated in Angola prison for a crime he didn't commit. So if you're under the age of 28 right now, if you're under the age of 27 right now, like you've been alive less than he was incarcerated for. And I'm sitting with my elders around this circle, and all they keep saying over and over again is, man, we started Ban the Box. We did this, we did that. We was with George Jackson. We was there. And I'm watching some of these brothers look like they're dying. And all I could do is just really and I'm leading the meeting. I gotta facilitate this meeting, right? I'm in a situation where I feel like I don't have nothing to say really. And a sister stepped into the space finally, and she said, we all are being re-traumatized by constantly going over, not just telling our personal stories and whatnot without processing them, but also talking about the work we're doing, which is traumatizing as well. Don't get it twisted. Being a freedom fighter is traumatizing. And I mean, you're faced every day with the reality that your society does not like you. I mean, Kendrick Lamar says, "You hate me, don't you?" And he means that, and it's real. They hate us. These systems hate us. They were built in a way to hate and destroy us. So the sister starts. So we take a break. I'm heated. Everyone's pissed off. We're on a plantation. We're experiencing trauma, and we come back together, and a group of about 6 women gather in the middle of the room and start singing. and I'm not going to sing for you, but I'll tell you what they sang. They said, "We are the children of the ones who did not die.
Right.
We are the children of the people who can fly.
Right.
We are the children of the ones who persevered. We are fearless. We are strong. We are ready to carry on." And we sang that over and over and over again until we were ready to carry on. There is not enough space for grounding. Some of y'all need to loosen your ties, put 2 feet on the ground, and get grounded. You need to hug somebody, you need to sing a song, you need to sing a freedom song, you need to go teach somebody a freedom song. And I'll just close with this, like another to my point about this false sense of divide amongst the elders in the new movement. If you've ever been to a Black Lives Matter event, you know that they will close and they will say, "It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains." That is Assata Shakur. They close every meeting by invoking the elders and grounding ourselves in what this movement and struggle is really about. And so I just want to say to you, like, thank you for raising the question of trauma. And like, we have to just create more spaces to heal, because our liberation won't happen if we don't.
So I don't have anything to say counter to what you just shared, Justin, but I will say as a Black woman in this conversation, it is often, we are often invisible. And so I thank you for raising the point, and we often don't allow ourselves the space to be vulnerable and to ask for help. And so to the point of creating the space, I think it even starts with the willingness to have the conversation and to admit, I'm tired, I need help, and to ask for that help, and to have the faith in your fellow sisters that there's a willingness and a openness to providing that help. So I don't know of any broader kind of initiative, but I think it starts with self. And it starts with those immediately around us. How are we creating the space where folks can be vulnerable and bring their full selves to the conversation and to this work?
So, well, first I have a comment about the initial question that the brother raised, and how do we rebuild this, or what do we focus on? And so I'm going to speak from the perspective of the healthcare and what we're doing and what we're moving toward. And one of the things is that we're looking at a cultural wellness model, and that is to say that the medical model doesn't work for us, and newsflash, it doesn't work for white folks either. And because it's a model that's built on disease management, and the practitioners are trained on disease management, diagnosing whatever, and if they can't find a disease or illness that you have, in order to get paid, they need to find something that is wrong with you and code it into the system. I know, because I got coders and billers, in order to get paid. So it's a model that is now starting to change, where it is a model where they have now got to the point where they know that all of the billions of dollars that we have spent on this healthcare system, guess what? Newsflash, we are not healthy.
That's right.
Compared to other countries, we are not healthy. And so in order to change that, it has to be a model that is built on wellness. And to be able to say that, you know what, and particularly for us as African Americans, we really got to go back to our cultural roots. And so now it's about making that mind, body, spirit connection. And I'm so thankful that I have African American doctors, African American psychiatrists that work at North Point that have taken this and have actually been trained in this model and understand that how we eat, what we are feeding ourselves, has an impact on our emotional well-being, right? We have been dealing with historical trauma. We're dealing with current trauma. Right. And there's a lot of that, so there's a lot of research that's going on that says that it has an impact on you physiologically. It changes your brain. And if it's changing your brain, doggone it, it is changing how you react. And then how do we counter that? How do we dig deep? And so we're looking on this cultural wellness model, and we're doing it in collaboration with our Asian brothers and sisters and our Latino brothers. You saw the slide, right? 23% of the patients that come to North Point are Latino. 12% are Asian. And so when we have cultural wellness activities, we not only honor African American culture, we honor the Asian culture, and we honor the Latino culture, because that is how we reclaim our wellness. So that is our strategy.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to thank you for saying that, Justin, and it made me think of Dr. King when he said, "My fear is that I'm integrating them into a burning house." And I believe we have not been the same since we integrated. I thought of Tulsa, Oklahoma, when you asked your question, and one way that we can start to build that system is by supporting all things Black. So when she was speaking, I was thinking about how I need to change my doctor to North Point and go back to North Point. And even from the makeup that we purchase, the realtors that we use, sending our children to the African American schools that we have here that I wasn't even aware of. So I think we just start with what we have now. Very good. Thank you.
Slay, please.
Hi, my comments are really highly connected to some comments that were made earlier, but I did want to say that it's overwhelming. It's truly overwhelming when we think about inciting change in this very vast manner. I wonder if we sometimes underestimate the breadth of diversity within the African American communities, within West African, East African communities, and even within those communities. So the idea of being able to incite this kind of mass global change that's based on these ideals that are very rooted in one type of existence, to me, is a bit problematic. So with that in mind, I feel like we need to start with ourselves. I feel like we need to better understand who we are as individuals and really better understand the complexity inherent in our genetic makeups, in our contemporary experiences, in our ancestral experiences, in our family experiences, in order to really have a better sense of how to proceed. I also wonder, again, I think a lot, sometimes I overthink. I also wonder if this idea of living in a system, if we take this approach, excuse me, let me back up. If we take this approach of really starting with the self and really having a strong sense of who we are as individuals and a strong sense of who we are as a diasporic community, then coming from that lens, I wonder if there is a way, because this idea of rebuilding a system or separating ourselves from a system is a very huge, huge step. I'm not saying that we can't do it, but it is a huge step. So with this enhanced knowledge of who we are as individuals and as a community, is it possible to live within this system that I agree is inherently biased, while all the while making these very deliberate, conscious choices on how we live, where, what restaurants we dine at, what schools we send our children to. I don't know, just another layer of complexity to add to the conversation.
Appreciate that. I've been working in domestic violence, sexual violence work now, and family therapy work for about 22 years. I'm retired Navy Marine Corps, retired about 4 or 5 years ago. And I was wondering, in Minnesota, I've heard some things at the school with the black male thing going on with the young students, great. Are there any dynamic or like state-wise or I guess Twin City-wise, any black marriage or family programs going on for enriching, developing black families or working a lot more in depth with controlling abusive behavior in relationships? That's what I'm wondering about.
I'm not certain, but I imagine that a really good first step in finding the answer to that question, and there may be additional insight on the panel, is the Cultural Wellness Center.
Oh, yeah.
And I know also NCAD with Brother Giovanni Ford.
Yes.
yeah, he does a lot of work with
The Network for the
African-American families.
Development of Children of African Descent.
Hi, my name is Anika Bowie, and I just want to get real brief, and I just really want to say thank you for those who've been calling out the illusion of inclusion, definitely in this room and just in this country, and we have to be really clear about what diversity means, not just black capitalists, not just, black supremacists. Like, we have to be really conscious of how we're being equitable in this country. So my questions, there are a lot, but it's just to help you keep in context of what I'm trying to address. So I'm just wondering, how do we eliminate this new Jim Crow with the felons? How do we eliminate the exception of the 13th Amendment where they abolished slavery except for a criminal record? And where are the Harriet Tubmans? How do we revolutionize our brothers and sisters who are still enslaved in the system today? Those who are serving life sentences, those who are serving even these violent sentences. I just really want to get in tune with that, because I feel like although we're not the ones who are enslaved, are incarcerated, there's still so many people, like Keith Ellison has said, other people on the panel have said, that we're forgetting about who's not in this room. And even when they're out of the prison, they're the forgotten ones. They're the invisible ones. So I just want to hear that verbalized on this panel.
You better hurry up before Justin jump in there. Now we go. Wait, you better hurry up.
I would say that I do work on this issue exclusively, but I also want to just step up, step back. So I'm gonna step back. Y'all got a reaction?
Well, step up then. Think about Justin, you gonna have to step
All
up.
right. So the short answer to that question, how do you dismantle the new Jim Crow? All those things that you suggested are really good. I don't have a short answer, so Dr. Johnson, please, bail a brother out.
I'm thinking that Keith offered us, you see, he offered us the responsibility to be politically active.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes what we forget is that we don't vote. The families that voted in 2008 did, and we got our president. In 2010, we did not. We got 35 Republican governors. Our state became what? Majority Republican in the Senate, et cetera. I'm saying we must do what is in the system now, and that is vote. If we decide that we want something, some brother said earlier, so-and-so is not, so-and-so is not, then let's study that. Let's go to, do you remember the caucus is March 1? What does that mean? And we have to be active. So I really think part of answering our young sisters' thoughtful set of questions is for us to do what the system is right now, and that's vote. And if we are successful there, don't you think we will go further?
So I would say, just to that point, there's a petition launched by the NAACP this week to restore voting rights to 47,000 Minnesotans who will face voter suppression this fall, turned away because they have a criminal record, they're on probation or parole. Then the last thing I want to say to my sister, we should talk offline, but I want to challenge you on something. I got to challenge everybody when I hear this, is that language is powerful. Do not refer to people as felons. That's your brother, that's your cousin, that's your sister. We gotta stop calling people felons. It's not felon voting, it's voting. And so I just want to challenge, first thing is we gotta get the narrative right. And then I would encourage you to support the work of the Minneapolis NAACP in signing the petition to Kurt Dowd, who is the biggest opposition to proponent of voter suppression in our state right now, because Republicans win when we stay home. So we have to go out. We have to get our families out.
I'd add, I just want to piggyback on what Dr. Johnson said about voting and zero in on local elections. That's where our day-to-day lives are impacted on a very real basis, and that is where voter turnout is the smallest, the most abysmal. So you want to talk about policing? You know, who is it that is appointing the police chief? It's the mayor. Are you voting in the mayoral election? You know, when I worked in the council member's office, I would get people calling and say, you know, this never would be an issue in Highland Park. And I would say to them, you're probably right. You know why? Because they vote. Closed mouths don't get fed. And if you think about voting in terms of like the workplace, so if I work with Michael and I upset Michael and Michael tells me, you know what, Akua, I think that was foul, I may or may not care based on my relationship with Michael. If Michael signs my check and he determines whether or not I keep my job and he tells me, you know what, Akua, I don't like what you did, I'm going to respond in a much different way. Our vote is our opportunity to decide whether or not people keep their jobs. And we don't even think about it that way. So I would just really echo that. And I think there's a very close connection with policing and our judges and all of those things that kind of tie into this condition that you raised. So thanks for raising the point, and thank you for reminding me about such an important point.
That as we are trying to determine what system we want that works for us, we can test some of those things that we may want to keep if we test them. And part of the testing is voting.
So please give the panel, this distinguished panel, a round of applause. Thank you very much.
We would like to invite back to the stage Tanya Hughes.
I was born by the river in a little tent. And oh, just like that river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know my change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living, and I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. Ooh, it's been a long time coming, but I know my change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Come on, let's go to the bridge. Oh, then I go to my brother, and I say, brother, help me, please. Oh, but then my brother, he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, there's been times that I thought I couldn't last for long. Now I know that I can carry on. Ooh, it's been a long time coming, but I know my change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Come on, let's sing that one more time together. Oh, it's been a long time coming, but I know my change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.